There she is.
Hi.
Joanna, can you hear me?
I can. I'm going to make you noisier.
Okay, make me noisier. I'm going to turn it up.
Yeah.
Hello.
Turn up the volume.
Okay, so I'm sure people are joining and wondering why they see my face instead of Dylan McGee. Guess what? She's sharing the mic now even more again, and having me, have this conversation with you around diversity and inclusion. So everybody, I'm Janae Hawkins. I lead all partnerships for makers, and I'm so excited to have this conversation. There's a lot of momentum, and there's a shift in the atmosphere right now, and I could not be more excited to have this conversation with you, Joanna. I mean, the first one we had to talk, right?
Yeah.
Joanna,
we have a lot to say, you and me.
We've had a lot to say. So everybody, this is like a FaceTime conversation, not an interview, because Joanna and I are friends and we talk about this stuff all the time. So we are both very passionate about diversity and inclusion. Joanna's had 30 plus years of experience in this space. You've, worked with women initiatives for a long time. You're really passionate about women of color, people of color. So let's just get started. We need to talk about your why and why you're passionate about this so people can be more familiar with you. I know and I adore you and your research, but people need to know.
So in 2004 is when it really started, and I was totally lost, totally out to sea, depressed, empty, you name it. And I was a senior partner at McKinsey at the time, so I had made it career-wise, and I had a family. I'm very proud of my family. I love them to pieces, and I have a farm with chickens and cows. So there was no reason to be lost, and I was. So I started researching by talking to women all over the world, and that led to centered leadership, which is, frankly, in a world where there is no equal opportunity,
right?
You've got to take care of yourself, and you've got to get to the most that you can be, the best that you can be, and you have a lot of room to be able to do that.
Right.
But around 2011, I realized that was terrific, but women were not making the progress that we wanted to make. And I've continued to research from the company point of view, from the leadership point of view, what is it that is stopping women from getting to the top in the droves that we ought to?
Right.
And then a year ago, it hit me that we're just same old. We're like little hamsters in a cage. And I chose to focus on Black women because I think
Thank you.
You are the canary in the coal mine. The shit that's happening to you at work, if we can address it, well, then everybody is going to benefit from that. And frankly, it is harder. Their challenges are greater to be a woman of color, and specifically a Black woman.
Right. So let's talk about today, right? And that this monumental shift in what's happening in our universe. I think a lot of leaders and CEOs are realizing that police brutality does not stop in the streets, right? It's something that is experienced in corporate America through microaggressions, the pay equity, lack of development for Black and brown employees. So let's talk about that a little bit, of how leaders can assess that, figure it out, and then move forward, because I really want to give people tangible action items to move forward.
Most leaders today have recognized that we all come to work from our society, from environment, and we bring everything that we're feeling at home, we're bringing it to work. And if you do not address that at work in the right kind of way that is sensitive to how people are feeling and the reality that they are experiencing, that things are just going to get worse at work. And so leaders have that. And the early tool that they've used are town halls. And those, you can get a score of 5 and you can get a score of 10 in a town hall. It's just a tool. I am finding a new reality, which for many, many years, people said, well, we got to teach how to listen. We all think we're good listeners, particularly women. We think we're really good at listening. And the reality of that is that leaders are not good at listening. And obviously you knew that because you've been talking, and a lot of the interviewees, I've interviewed now, almost 200 people.
Right.
But of the about 100 people of color that I've interviewed, an awful lot of them, not all, but a lot of them have said, I do not feel heard.
Mm-hmm.
I do not feel seen at work.
Right.
So I started to listen. And if you're a leader, here is the simple tool to listen better than you did yesterday, which is, it's not about you. It's about the person talking. It's that simple.
Oh.
The way our brains work, the minute somebody else starts talking,
Right.
we think, oh, I did that. Let me tell about the experience. Oh, I experienced that. And I did this, I did that.
Right.
And it's all about me. And the other person has every right to say, are you a Black woman, Joanna? I don't think you've had this experience. And you know what? That's great. That's great feedback. So I'm learning that it's about you and your story. And I'm just here to validate it, to honor it.
Wow.
And to be with you as you tell it.
And you have been. I want to acknowledge that too, because I did not want to start this conversation selfishly. I want to have it with you because you're an accomplice, right? I didn't want to just have it with an ally. It's a lot of conversations of, I'm an ally. No, accomplice is doing the work, and I appreciate you doing it. So let's dive into what you know I have a problem with, the role of chief diversity officers and what people think that they are powerless. They have no effect on change in the organization. Typically, you know, heads of diversity and inclusion do not report into the CEO. So let's talk about the structure and the media action companies can take right now, because, you know, a lot of global heads of D&I do not report into the CEO. But the chief diversity officer does. So let's unpack that a little bit.
So there are two hot buttons, I think.
Yep.
The first one, and you've mentioned both already. The first one is the structure, which is D&I part of HR, or is it in fact reporting separately to the CEO? Both can work with the right person, with the right CEO backing of that person. What it goes wrong is when the CEO says, okay, Janae, you're in charge. Come back to me when you got the answer. Or worse, come back to me when it's done and you're successful. Because any CDO's chief diversity officer worth her salt or his salt is going to come back and say, this is not my problem. This is leadership's problem. You, CEO, madam or sir, or whomever you are, this is your problem. You're accountable. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, who's this person? This almighty CDO who's going to fix the whole company. Normally, it's a person from HR or from business. So there's a real hot debate. It can't just be
a person of color. It can't just be a token position, right?
Right. So you know, a lot of companies have said, check that box. I got a CDO. I always ask them, why do you need a CDO? What is this person going to do? Ask yourself before you just say compliance. I'm protecting myself in the legal courts of America. This person is someone who has extraordinary ability to connect the organization, to say the truth as this person sees it, and to get others to come on board. And that's, I think, sometimes the fault, frankly, of the CEO, and sometimes it's the fault of the CDO, who is worried about keeping her job. I mean, put a muzzle on it, Joanna, because I know every CEO in America is going to hate you now.
No, say it. Say it, because I was just talking to a group of friends about this. You know, it's not that just people of color have a problem with HR, right? It's everybody. And you and I've talked about this too. And it's the why. Like, why is the function of HR dedicated just towards the company and not taking care of the people?
Yeah. So imagine, let's put ourselves in as if we were the heads of HR for the company, whatever company. It's a really tough position because you want to help everybody in the company. At the same time, the company is liable, and lawyers are talking to you, senior leaders are talking to you, the head of finance is talking to you, and suddenly you go, whoa, I feel really hemmed in here. But the trouble is, if you're a young woman of color in that organization and you go to HR because something's happened, a microaggression, you might get nothing back in return. As the head of HR protects the firm against your potential activation.
And that's so important, because if HR is not doing it, that person of color needs to then find an advocate, an accomplice, a sponsor, all of which I have. But imagining the women that, look at me in organizations that don't have that.
You're fucking alone.
Correct. And the emotional toll, yes, we curse on here, Joanna, keep it going. The emotional toll that goes along with that, on top of the pandemic, within the pandemic that we're experiencing. How do you have that tough conversation with the CEO? So I was telling you beforehand, I have a very close friend who is an amazing engineer that works for a predominantly white male, area. And at a construction site, there were nooses hanging, in plain sight. And I'm struggling saying this because I'm getting emotional thinking about this is something that is currently happening. And that's on the other end of the spectrum, right? Of CEOs that just don't get it, or that happens after they make a declaration saying this is not going to be tolerated in my company. So then what do you do? Because I know you've talked to tons of CEOs, right? From the end where they are sponsors and accomplices and folks that are trying to get it right. But what about those that are struggling with this, right? Where you have a noose hanging at a construction site?
First of all, that is unacceptable.
Yeah.
It's unacceptable in every single imaginable way.
Right.
And talking to the CEO has to be a leader in this instance and put an end to it. And there have to be consequences. And clearly there's so much pain in that story.
Right.
From all sides. I like to start out and assume that our leaders are generally good people who want to do good things. Right. And no one, this is hard to say, but no white person wants to be told that he or she is racist. But stuff like this happens all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's frightening. It's frightening to all of us. So you have to tell the truth. You have to put it in the open where it won't fester. And then you have to be able to address it. That person needs an apology. Your friend needs a real apology for that.
So her specifically, or the Black community within that?
Well, both.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
She's the important person.
She needs a damn apology. Yes, say it.
And, and frankly, she needs more than that, in the sense that she needs to understand what are the steps the company is going to take for this never to happen again. Mm-hmm. And clearly she wants the facts, just like everybody else wants the facts. Is how did something like this, did the person think it was a joke? Is it just a rope that looks like a noose and that, it's not a noose? Is it a noose? I can just imagine the boardroom discussion that will go on for hours about this situation. But in the end, we're all human beings, and somebody needs to say, this feels wrong, and you should not have to endure this at work. We have
and not on my watch.
Place.
And not on my watch as the CEO. This won't happen. No. Right. Exactly.
And frankly, if you're somebody in Illinois in the company who wasn't anywhere near that construction site, you have a right, and you're a person of color, you have a right to have an apology too, because it's about all of us. It's about the white ladies in the company. Who the hell wants to go to a construction site and be catcalled?
Right.
No one wants to experience a hostile act like that.
Right.
Even if the idiot who did it thought it was funny. It's not funny. And this is where I get very shrill, so I will shut up.
Oh, I wish you would go there, because I'm ready. I'm like on the edge of my seat, ready to go there. It pisses me off to have these conversations, but I love to have them with people that are open and we figure out a solution. So in that vein, how can CEOs and CDOs work together so this isn't happening, right? Or at least elevate the head of diversity and inclusion, the global head, to the CEO? How do we do that? Like, what are the steps? I know you've worked very closely with CEOs to help them get to that point. What's the tangible action steps?
So we have to make this real. Let's start with the CEO wanting good intention to make things better for all people who are talented at the company, regardless of what they bring to work and their background context. The real underlying issue is, what are the mindsets that drive that CEO and top team? And those mindsets naturally create behavior. So if the underlying mindset is this is a zero-sum game, and if Janae, you get promoted, then I, Joanna, cannot get promoted, then I see you as a competitor. And I fight the weakest competitors every inch of the way. And that's where all this microaggression bullshit comes from. It comes from a game that everybody at work plays that says there are winners and losers, and I don't want to be a loser. So I guess that needs to be you, and let me figure out a way to push you down.
Right.
We have to shift away from that to a different mindset that serves the company better, serves the business better. And that could be, we do not have enough talent. So we're going to look for talent in any shape and size it comes in. We are going to cultivate talent. And that means we're going to listen and see everybody so that we can find the best talent wherever it sits in the company. So how do you do that? The first thing you have to do as a CEO and CDO is you have to diversify the talent. You can't make this stuff up. There has to be all kinds of people at the top. And if you can't do that because you have no jobs to fill, then you can split jobs. You can change your operating executive team. It doesn't have to be the people who report to you. It can be other people.
Can you do that overnight?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course you can.
Okay.
You can say, I don't have a voice of the customer, so I'm going to take this person 3 levels down and bring her up to put her on the team because I want to hear what she has to say. Or I want to hear the voice of the CDO who happens to not report to me, so I'm going to take him and put him on my top team. That's a decision the CEO can make overnight on a Sunday.
People in the comments are loving it, by the way, Joanna.
Okay. Second thing is Rooney Rule. Everybody said, well, you know, Rooney Rule doesn't work. You know, there's all these academic studies. Does the Rooney work or not? It turns out that if you put one person of color on a slate, let's say there are 4 people on the slate, you would assume logically that this person of color has a 25% chance of winning the job. And the answer is actually, no, this person has a 1 or 2% chance because it doesn't work that way.
1 or 2%?
So you need to put 50% women and people of color on the slate if you want to make a change. If you want to open up the minds of the people doing the recruiting enough for them to get out of their home base so that they look at these individuals as human beings, so they look at the criteria in a much wider way, and then they might actually pick a woman or a person of color. They might not, but now you've at least changed the conversation. You've made them think. So the CEO can do that right away. And I think it's pretty important. And then the next thing the CEO has to do, which is unpleasant, but it has to be done, is there have to be some goals. There has to be reporting, data reporting, transparency, at the very least among that top team. They got to see the numbers. They got to discuss the numbers every damn week, just like you discuss the business every week, right? And then you got to tie it to compensation in a meaningful way. Otherwise, nobody's going to pay attention. And there have to be consequences.
Exactly.
Like, oh, sorry, I brought in my sales figure, but I didn't, I have an all-white male organization because that's, you know, what I have. But look, we're delivering because we're, you know, we're delivering. You got to say, you know what, that's not good enough. The rules change. You need to do it in a diverse way because that's what is good for our business. Right.
So changing at the top and transparency. Okay, so here's something that really bugs me. When all of these CEOs started putting out statements about Black Lives Matter, right? And I started to think, this is so great, but why aren't you eating your own cooking? Why aren't you elevating the people internally?
And
why
they're there.
Saying something happening overnight? You know what I mean? So how can we, not even just the top, right, and the chief spots, but the people that are mid-level or director level and VP and about, like, how do we make sure that those people who probably because of microaggressions were passed up for a promotion? Hello, like, give me my money, right? Pay me, give me a promotion. So how do you support that? Because I know you're having a lot of conversations with CEOs. So what does that conversation look like? I want to know what you say.
So it goes back to mindsets.
Yeah.
because the first thing you hear is, oh, we don't have anybody. And then you got to show them the pipeline, the data that says, well, actually, it's not true. You have quite a few people in your organization. But those people typically, when you dig down, are not getting stretch opportunities.
Right.
So they're
not being developed. Right.
You know, I don't know how many times I have heard the evaluation of women being, she's so good at process, which is code for she's not very smart. We don't know if she's smart or not because we've only given her process work to do. And she's never said, you know, I'm tired of this process bullshit. Give me hard problems to solve.
Correct.
She want to take the risk, so she doesn't put her hand up and say, give it to me, give it to me.
Right.
And the guy puts his hand up and says, I'm great, even though he's not. So we have the same issue with
right.
people of color.
Right.
We have the same issue. If we don't take risk, then we won't get the stretch opportunities. Or if we're not given them, because
right.
people already have a mindset issue that maybe we're less good, then we don't get the experience that we need to be able to do those jobs.
Right.
So as a result, I think there's a really important role for powerful people in HR and diversity, which I'm calling the guardian angel.
Okay.
And it comes from an interview that I did with an African-American woman who was at a law firm. And what she said she does is she tracks every associate in the law firm. And not just, once in a while, she watches them through their career, because you forget about people who are not, in the limelight. You just forget they're there. And then suddenly everybody forgets they're there. And then, then the valuation comes up and people go, well, who's that again? Who's Janae? Remind me.
Right.
And that's terrible for you in the evaluation process. So we need guardian angels who go, wait a minute, I just spoke to her last week and this is what's going down and you need to give her this opportunity.
Right.
I think she's ready for it. Let's push her.
Right.
People do need to be pushed.
Right.
Particularly people who have been told their whole lives, you're not good enough. You have to work harder. I don't know how many interviews I've had. Tell me if you've heard this from a grandmother. You have to work twice as hard and, be 3 times as good or 4 times as good to do half as well and get paid a quarter. It's like,
yes,
the equation sucks, man.
It sucks. Yes, it sucks. And I just want to shout out to my guardian angels that are on here that are making sure that little Janae Hawkins from East St. Louis is in here getting paid and elevated. Thank you. You know who you are. So that's a great point, the guardian angel effect. I wonder, is there something, that we can even help like accomplices and allies too, because I think that there's a tough conversation that's happening around that. So what would you say for people that are trying to help and don't know how, CEOs who are just stuck and saying, I want to support all people of color in my organization, but I have made these statements, I don't know how to, what would you say to them?
So there are a bunch of ways that people can help depending on their willingness to take risk. Mm-hmm. The lowest level of risk is to be a translator. Mm-hmm. A translator is somebody who gets it. It's sort of, I'm thinking of Fahrenheit 451, great book, great movie. Yep. You know the story and you're willing to teach the story to the newcomer. There are a lot of people who start in the company and nobody teaches them the story. So they don't know where anything is or what those words mean. And you need a translator to help you. Right. There's another role that people can play and should play, which is, I haven't got a good name for it, but frankly, it's the advocate for justice. Mm. There are people in the organization who care about fairness so much that they're vigilante about that issue. And they don't even care who you are or what you've done. They just want to make sure that you get a fair shake and that everybody gets a fair shake. And so those people speak up. Their job is to make trouble. Right. And in a good way, to say, let's just question whether we're being fair here. And I love, years ago, Sheryl Sandberg was that justice warrior in the sense that she said, to somebody who gave this woman a bad review, if this woman was a man, would those words have meant the same thing? Mm. So that's the justice warrior. Right. The third role is coach. And a lot of people can get facilitator training and get very good at conflict and difficult conversations.
Good.
That
Yeah.
stuff exists all over the place. There are great facilitators out there. And every company should have 25 of these people who raise their hand and go, I want to be a mediator, a coach. And then when you feel that there's been a microaggression from your manager, this coach sits down and hears both sides and helps you work it out.
Right.
Because sometimes you just can't make that connection. In fact, in a lot of the interviews I've done, people are not connected.
Yeah.
At all.
Right.
Like,
right.
is that even, I mean, work becomes really unfun if you don't have any connection at work and you feel alone.
Right.
That is not a place you want to be for 12 hours a day.
No, it's not. It's not. Oh, this is so good. Guess what?
What?
We're at our time.
Oh,
that went. I know. This is so good. Yes, thank you for all of your work. This conversation is going to continue. We may have to jump on live again. The comments have been great. People are really enjoying this, so we got to do it again.
Well,
but thank you.
Thank you, Janae, for sticking your head up above the crowd and saying, let's be heard.
Yes, and thank you for standing in the trenches and being an accomplice.
I'm proud to be it.
Oh, thank you, Joanna. Bye. Thank you, everybody. I cannot believe that time went by so fast. I'm super appreciative of this platform to be able to share the mic now with Dylan and the Makers team. Thank you so much for making sure this went smoothly. If you want to hear more of a conversation about DE and I, because you can't forget about the equity piece, we're going to keep this conversation going. Thank you so much. Sending love, light, and peace to everybody, and we will see you next time. Bye.